We zijn hier te gast bij het Rotterdams Philharmonisch Orkest, hier in de grote zaal in de Doelen in Rotterdam, waar nu filmcomponist Alexandre Desplat zijn eigen muziek gaat dirigeren. En we zijn vereerd dat we even met hem mogen spreken. Monsieur Desplat, enchanté.
Enchanté.
First of all, do I pronounce your name correctly?
You did.
You did.
It was perfect.
Desplat.
Yes, absolutely.
You have made over 130 film scores, if I'm correct. Actually, you're quite famous for the pace you're working in. But film composing is as much an art as it is a craft. So where do you find the time and where do you find your inspiration?
Oh, it's very simple. It comes from the film that I'm given to score. If I like the script and I like the work of the director, when I receive the film, I know that I'll be inspired. You know, it's the way he's moved his camera, the way he's used the light, the way the actors play, the voices, all these beautiful things that make a good story.
And where in this process do the musical ideas appear?
Well, it varies. It can appear early on if if I go on set, if I receive dailies. But I do like to try and keep my virginity in a way that I see the film when it's finally being put together at the editing room, because otherwise sometimes you take wrong directions because you've seen a daily and maybe that scene will be gone. So it's better, I think, for me to wait a little bit until the movie is getting in the shape of almost a finite shape, and then I can surf on the shape of the editing, the pace, also some scenes can have been changed. Some actors can have disappeared from the script, and so yeah, I try to wait.
And so is this a process that happens within your own study, within your own room, or do you take like a walk in nature or through the city? Or
I tend to go to my studio very early on and to stay in my studio for long hours. Yes, of course I can go for a run in the park, but no, I don't have lunches or dinners. Most of the time I stay in my studio and stay focused. That's the way I manage to do what I do, which means quite a few movies a year, write the music fast. It's by sacrificing other things.
And writing the music fast, it's also by necessity. You have to.
You have to, because you receive the movie in general rather late, but there's always a date which has been locked for mixing the film and for releasing the film. So there's a wall and you can't go.
It's fixed.
It's fixed. So you have the amount of weeks that you're given, 6, 8, 2, 3, whatever. Sometimes the director has changed his mind and wants to change a composer, and you're called in. There's only 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and if you accept, well, good luck.
But if you would have the luxury of just having to write music for one film and you have limitless time, would the result be any different?
I think I don't work very well in limitless time. I think I like the pressure. I like this energy. The fact that I have to be really focused on a story, a project, it helps my creativity, I think. Otherwise, maybe I would write for concert all the year long, but that's not what I do.
You mentioned already a few things about the process. Can you take us through this process with a producer, a director, the film, your job? I think it's quite a complex issue. It's not just making some nice music.
Yeah. Yes, especially in America where there are many voices. When you work for a studio, there's of course the producer of the film, but also the studio above the producer, and many voices that you need to be able to hear, understand, and transcript at some point to understand how you can deliver what they've been telling you. Sometimes it's minor things. Sometimes you have to erase a portion of what you've written and rewrite. Sometimes in the studio right away with the musicians waiting. But you know, when everything goes well, it's a process that you know takes time with the director, meeting him like every other day. For Guillermo del Toro, for example, or Wes Anderson, they would come to my studio every other day, and we would you know discuss about the new material that I'm providing, and we would adjust, or it would be just signed out right away, or rejected sometimes, and I have to find another option. And only the director knows what he wants. I can only guess.
And you have to oblige.
Yes, of course. As long as I keep my integrity musically, it's fine. Yes, there's always a way of keeping your integrity. You can be smart about that.
Let's talk a little bit about film music itself. What, in your opinion, is the most important role of music in film?
I think it's to bring out the invisible, what is not yet on the screen, because I hear many scores which are just doing what the image is doing, and that's okay. Maybe in a genre movie sometimes you have to do that, but otherwise it's a bit simplistic. I also hear scores who do nothing. They don't take chances. It's just you know kind of a drone or a pad of synthesizer, which means nothing, no emotion, no. It's just abstract and with no. It doesn't take chances.
No integrity, maybe.
Not much. So I guess bringing out the invisible, finding a vibration between the sound that you create with the way you assemble instruments and the image, but also, most importantly, how you embellish, you emphasize the dramaturgy, how you follow it, but at the same time, not mirroring the dramaturgy, but just making it deeper, with more depth of field. Sometimes a wider sound will give the solo character in a room a huge sensation to the audience, meaning that maybe this character has something happening in his mind or in his future, maybe. So it's very instinctive and at the same time very intellectual. It's something that you have to live with when you're watching the film again and again, trying to be one of these characters and being able to play with these characters at the same time.
But right now you're here to conduct your own music in a concert hall. We are playing your music at the radio. How do you feel about that? Aren't we missing something without the film?
Well, when I became passionate about film music, it was by buying records and listening to these soundtracks away from the films. Sometimes there's many soundtracks I have, all vinyls, I never saw the films, but I know the music very well. So it means that I learned very early on that the greatest could write music for films and still have music that stands alone. And it's always a challenge. You can't always do it in every score for too many reasons.
Depends on the film.
On the film, on the way the director wants the music to be playing, short pieces, long pieces, subdued, not enough instruments, whatever. So, but I always try, because my first encounter with the music that I've written is when I record it with an orchestra, to take the example of an orchestra or a band or whoever is recording the music. And I'm here standing in front of them, and I want them to be enjoying that moment, not to be bored because there's nothing to play interesting. So I want also to because I'm conducting them, so I'm actually one more musician dancing with them, and I want to that dance is exciting and fun and challenging musically. You know, that it's not just something that is not very very interesting.
No, and also for the musicians, what you said, it should be interesting for them to play because it will improve the sound and the experience.
And especially when you have, these kind of virtuosos, incredible musicians around you, give them something to play. Give them food. Don't let them be bored. They've played the most difficult concertos you can imagine. So come on. I think they like to be challenged.
That's true. That's true.
Not to be ignored.
You've mentioned your first encounter with film music. It's Star Wars, right?
No, that's not the first, but because I was listening to film music before, but it's the first one where I felt that all the music of the 20th century was kind of in a box suddenly and became an object that did not exist before, but everything was there, and that's the genius of John Williams. Jazz, orchestra, Prokofiev, Ravel, Debussy, Stravinsky, everyone was, they were all dissolved into one sound, and it was John Williams' sound, and I found that really, really spectacular. And that's why, at the second I could, in 2000, I recorded with the London Symphony, because it was written on that cover, Star Wars, composed, orchestrated and conducted by John Williams, the LSO. So I was fascinated by that talent that John Williams had that knowledge and that craft that he had, which is still immense.
And do you, at this point in your career where you next to him instead of looking up to him, do you still have some examples, some people you get influenced by, get inspired by?
Unfortunately, I'm still under influence of John Williams. I'm still looking up to him.
Why unfortunately?
Because he's still doing masterpieces. Each time he writes a score, you learn from him. So as long as he'll be writing scores, I'll be learning.
You've worked a lot with different film directors. How does that process of a different director influence your music?
That's a very important question because, some young composers can think that they can write film music. It's easy because, there's an image and you write music for the image. But it's not for the image that you write. You write for a director who has a point of view, has an education, a craft, some knowledge of music or none. And you have to adjust to that. You have to understand what he wants. You have to comprehend what the film is about and how the music can help. What's needed, and in all these conversations with the director, you need to be a diplomat as much as a composer, and that's something you have to learn and to accept, which is sometimes difficult for some composers.
And could we, for instance, zoom in on your collaboration with Wes Anderson, someone who is also known, for instance, for his use of classical music in his films? Is he someone you have to convince to use your music, or? No. We sit in my studio. I play the ideas that I've found. Usually we decide a bit ahead what kind of instrumentation we're going to use, and then I have fun. It's like two children playing in their bedrooms, with their soldiers and their cars and their little castle with their knights and princesses. We try, we explore, we have fun. No, it's just it's a natural process, and his movies are so rich of ideas and visually, and even in the dramaturgy, because if you look at all these movies, they seem fun and full of joy, but if you really read the script and the story, they're all very sad and dark stories. Asteroid City, it's kids with their father going in a box the remains of the mother who just died. The really
ashes,
sad.
But it starts like something fun, but it's not fun. But the music makes it fun. Let's put it that way.
So at our radio station, we're having a film music top 400 this week, and your music is featured there a lot.
Like number 99 or?
No, I think you're mentioned quite a lot. A lot of your films are, one of the highest ranked films is Grand Budapest Hotel.
Okay.
And I think maybe that's because it's such a rich score for such a rich film as well. Can you tell us something about that particular film, how that came about?
Well, there's something with that film with Wes or some with Guillermo or others I did before, where with Jacques Audiard or whoever, that when the music is right, it glues to the film and you can't take it out. It just becomes, as I said, it becomes a wheel that's in that clock, and you can't take that wheel off, otherwise the clock stops. So with Wes, I remember he sent me the script, and he said, how about we use some dulcimers or cymbalums and things, and so what we tried, I circled around Mittel Europa, and we ticked all the boxes of the instruments we could use, and then once I had the list, I wrote for these instruments, knowing that we would need a very strong melody that could be taking us through the journey of these characters, and that's something else. Wes Anderson's music is very melodic. Guillermo del Toro's music, what I read for them, is also very melodic, which is also something that kind of disappears in many movies. It's very hard to write a good melody, very hard. It's a lot of work. And I think people enjoy that. There's no shame about writing a melody that I
Please,
think.
no.
So
You have done a lot of films, a lot of Oscar nominations, a lot of awards. Is there something you still would want to do in your career, some ambition you have?
I don't know if it's ambition. It's more desire of being in danger in, writing more concert pieces, and continue writing films with people I like and who like me, who like my music, where it's flawless when we work together. There's an excitement of both sides. It's not always the case, so I try to keep it in that very positive energy.
Mr. Desplat, thank you very much for your time.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you.